Welcome to Skytech-Lens. The autumn of 2025 marked the abrupt collapse of North America's most vital trading relationship, not through careful policy, but triggered by a TV ad and a Truth Social post. On October 23, President Trump declared all trade negotiations with Canada terminated, reacting to an Ontario government ad protesting U.S. tariffs and featuring Ronald Reagan. The White House saw the ad as a personal affront, not a plea for open markets. Trump accused Canada of meddling in U.S. affairs, escalating the situation. The Reagan Foundation objected to the ad, giving Washington more ammunition to frame the dispute as disrespect, not policy. Secretary of State Marco Rubio confirmed the suspension of all talks, plunging North American trade into chaos. What began as a provincial protest spiraled into an international crisis, shattering decades of quiet diplomacy and setting the stage for a confrontation that would reshape global supply chains. Navigating this crisis was Canada's new Prime Minister Mark Carney. Carney, a former central banker, had just taken office after a snap election, leading a minority government that demanded constant negotiation with opposition parties. The U.S. trade dispute was his first major test, one that required uniting a fractured parliament and rallying the nation. Carney's expertise in global finance gave him a unique edge. He understood the stakes and the intricacies of international markets. He knew Canada's response had to be strategic, not just rhetorical. Projecting strength to Canadians and the world, Carney also sought to de-escalate the conflict and shield the economy from a prolonged trade war. His leadership, forged in the world of finance, would now be tested on the global stage. The fate of Canada's economy rested on his ability to act decisively. The sudden halt in trade talks struck at the heart of a century-old economic partnership. Every day, $3.6 billion in goods and services crossed the U.S.-Canada border, supporting millions of jobs. At the core, critical metals like nickel, copper, and cobalt, essential for everything from electric vehicles to smartphones. Canadian mines and refineries supply American factories, a supply chain built on trust and mutual benefit. This partnership, forged in war and peace, is more than economic. It's strategic. The new tariffs threaten to unravel this fabric, treating Canadian metals as a threat rather than a shared resource. The Trump administration's move undermined the foundation of American industrial strength. The intricate cross-border supply chain was thrown into chaos, with consequences for both nations. The economic shock was immediate. U.S. automakers, reliant on Canadian minerals, faced shortages and production delays, stalling the electric vehicle transition. Commodity prices soared, fueling inflation and new headaches for the Federal Reserve. American workers saw factory slowdowns and stagnant wages, contradicting promises of more jobs. In Canada, the pain was acute. 75% of exports go to the U.S., leaving businesses and workers in limbo. Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem warned of structural damage to the economy. Mining towns in Ontario and Quebec feared for their future, while U.S. factory workers faced layoffs. The once integrated supply chain became a conduit for shared economic pain. The folly of treating a trusted partner as a rival was laid bare. The crisis exposed a deep vulnerability in the U.S. economy, its dependence on Canadian critical minerals. Despite political rhetoric, the U.S. relies on Canada for nearly half its nickel imports, vital for batteries and aerospace. Canada is also America's second-largest copper supplier, with almost all Canadian copper exports heading south. For cobalt, the U.S. is 76% import-dependent, with Canada a key source. Even with a mining boom, the U.S. can't meet its own demand for key minerals like copper and nickel. The U.S. also lacks sufficient smelting and refining capacity, a gap Canada has long filled. The numbers make it clear. America cannot simply go it alone. The trade war revealed the recklessness of taking this partnership for granted. With Washington unyielding, Prime Minister Carney launched a bold pivot, quickly dubbed the Carney Doctrine. Recognizing over-reliance on the U.S. as a liability, Carney aimed to diversify Canada's global partnerships. He de-escalated tensions by removing most retaliatory tariffs and pausing the controversial ad campaign, signaling readiness for dialogue. But the real shift was strategic. Canada would leverage its mineral wealth to become the indispensable supplier for a new alliance of democracies. Carney's cabinet embarked on global diplomacy, offering Canada as a secure, ethical alternative to both the U.S. and China. Domestically, new federal funds incentivized building refineries and battery plants, aiming for a complete supply chain within Canada. Provinces like Ontario and Quebec became hubs for this new industrial strategy. The trade war became a catalyst for national renewal. Canada was no longer just managing a crisis, it was seizing an opportunity. The centerpiece of Carney's strategy was a landmark agreement with Germany, signed in August 2025. This deal created a secure supply chain for critical minerals, bypassing both China and the US. The concept, friendshoring, relocating supply chains among trusted democratic allies. Canada's stable politics and mineral wealth made it the anchor of this new model. The German deal became a blueprint, with Canada quickly signing similar agreements with Japan and India. Major European and Asian firms invested billions in Canadian processing and refining, creating high-value jobs. The US trade blockade, meant to isolate Canada, instead accelerated its integration with global economic powerhouses. Canada emerged as a linchpin in the world's new friendshoring networks. Canada's pivot and friendshoring sent shockwaves through global trade. Nations and corporations everywhere began reassessing their supply chain vulnerabilities. Efficiency was no longer the only metric. Geopolitical risk and shared values now mattered most. Other mineral-rich countries like Australia and Chile followed Canada's lead, forging their own friendshoring alliances. Meanwhile, the US pursued a patchwork of short-term deals, even signing a trade truce with China. This created a stark contrast. Canada led a coalition of democracies building resilient supply chains, while the US isolated itself. International capital began flowing toward the stability of friendshoring networks. The world's economic map was being redrawn by strategic supply chain decisions, not military might. The events of October 2025 delivered a clear lesson: no nation can afford to go it alone. The US attempt to bully Canada backfired, exposing vulnerabilities and accelerating a global shift away from American dominance. Canada's turn to Europe and Asia transformed crisis into leadership, proving the power of true partnership. Supply chains are geopolitical assets, not just logistical networks. Friendshoring is a necessary correction. Economic and national security are inseparable. The North American trade dispute showed that cooperation is the ultimate strength. The future lies in reinforcing bridges, not building walls. True security is found in enduring partnerships. Thanks for watching. Subscribe the channel for more updates.